Good evening, everybody.
Kavod Harav, how are you?
Baruch Hashem, thank you. So we said yesterday in the tour that the villages which are close to that walled city also have the same law that they read on the 15th. And that applies even if they're not visible with them. In other words, you see them together. So when is that you don't see them together? When they're in a valley. So, the valley, whatever's inside there is not visible. That's what he's trying to say. Okay, so that's the tour. So says Bet Yosef regarding that. Perek Kama de Megillah. It's also in the first perek of Megillah. Bet Amud Bet. Amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. Right? It says this rabbi. Krach. Right? The rule is that you have a walled city, v'chol samuchlo, and whatever is juxtaposed to it, close to it, v'chenan and nir'eh imo, also something which is seen together with it. So what does that mean? That it's seen together with it, but it's not really so close. So you have two different ways, right, of look, two different options, two different conditions. Okay. Nidon kikrach. So these are judged like a walled city itself. The outcome, so right, the question is, how far does that go? Gemara asks, Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah, ke mechamatan letveria mil. So he says it's like the distance between these two cities, which is like a kilometer. So it seems like the kilometer is the border. If it's more than that, it's already too far. Okay. Well, Bata Achi Tanas, afterwards, right, we learned in the Mishnah there, Samuch, Afa Pi She'eno Nireh. So we're talking about two different ways, right? If it's close to it, but it's not seen with it, Nireh Afa Pi She'eno Nireh Samuch, or the other way around, right? That it's seen with it, but it's not really so close. Bishlama Nireh Afa Pi She'eno Samuch. So says the Gemara, I understand, right, that, in other words, I understand how to conceptualize this, where you see something, but it's not really so close. So what does that mean? Like when, when you look at them, they look like they're together, but, distance-wise, they could be quite a distance apart. That's one scenario, right, which is understood. Sometimes, this can occur. So then he says, where do you find that, right, in a scenario like that? That's going to be, right, relevant when it's on the top of the mountain, right? So what does that mean? That, since it's on top of the mountain, you do see it, together, but they're not really so close. That's one scenario, right? The other one, now let's go to the other one. So Gemara asks, what about when it's close, but you can't see them together, right? How does that work, right? Why can't you see them together if they're so close? Right? How do you find that? So it says the Gemara answers. Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah, this rabbi says, "Biyoshevet ben Nachal." Right? We're talking about, as we said, that it's in the valley, right? Located in the valley. Umashma de shiur mil lo itmar ela lesamuch. So he says implies that this distance that we said, which is a mil, right, which is kilometers, we said more or less, right, more or less, not exactly, but anyway, right. That when we talk about this distance of mil, by the way, the word mil sounds like a mile, right? Probably comes from the same root, right? As I told you guys before, that there's a book written about this. How the etymology of many foreign words, that come from English and French and God knows what else, right? Their root is in Hebrew, right, or Aramaic. So this probably is a good example, right? That this distance is called a mil, right? And we call it in English, right, a mile. Probably the same root from the word. But the thing is, right, that the mile is like double the length of the mil, right? So the mil is more like a kilometer. That's the only difference. Because if I'm not mistaken, right, when we translate, when we convert, right, the kilometer to the mile, so 1 mile is like 2.2 kilometers, if I'm not mistaken. So a mile is quite large, Okay, whatever. So anyway, right?
So but a kilometer is 1,000 meters, correct?
Absolutely.
So the mil of in Spanish is mil, like the mil, what you're saying.
There you go, right? So you have the same thing in Spanish.
Yeah.
There you go.
Thank you.
Yeah. So what is it? What does mil mean in Spanish?
1,000.
So it's a kilometer.
Yes, a kilometer.
Okay, so
yes.
great. That's what, so there you go, right? There you go. So the Spanish is much closer than the English,
Yes.
Okay, whatever, right? You get the point. So anyway, right? Mil. Okay, so good. So as we said, right, that so he says regarding that size of the mil, lo itmar ela besamuch, right? It's only talking about when it's close. In other words, judging it if it's close by or not. Proximity. Ve'eno nir'eh, aval nir'eh afilu rachok kama nidon kekrach. So he says it doesn't seem right though to say that. So he says it seems more correct to say that even if it's quite far away, right, even more than that, it's still right. It's still considered to be close to the whatever, not close, but seen with the city. In other words, we have the same din, right? The same halacha there that we read on the 15th. Okay, interesting. Let's go on a little bit. יש לתמוע על לשון רבנו. So he says there is a wonder here. He says about the language of the Torah, שנראה שהוא סובר, because it seems like he holds the שיעור מיל שאמרו כאה גם לנראה. That the size of the meal also applies to something which actually is close, is seen to be close. Seen together. I'm sorry, seen together. Even though it's not really so close. So it's as if so, why was it mentioned, right? The issue of seen together, because if they don't have more than a meal between them, Harehu Samuch is considered to be really close by. Even though it's not seen together with it. As we said, right? When is that? When it's in a valley. Haredino kamo. So then it comes out to be the same. Vim hi rachok yoter. I'm sorry. Im hu rachok yoter. If it's more further than that, even though it's seen together with it, Hamrat, but didn't you just say, right? You said, then it don't come out, it's not going to be considered to be a part of it. Okay, interesting. So in other words, he's trying to kind of like refute the words of the tour here, saying that it doesn't really fit into the context, right, of this halacha. Okay, interesting. So let's go on. Right now, he brings the Rambam. Rambam katab b'kedivrei Rabbeinu. So he says the Rambam wrote like Rabbeinu, right, like the tour. But Tama alav Rabbi Magid. So Rabbi Magid was wondering, right, how he wrote like that. Ve'he'ela she'ikar nuscha b'dvarav hi krach. So he concludes, right, this rabbi, that the proper text in the words of the Rambam is right krach, which means a walled city. And then right a walled city and everything which is seen with it. The chola samuch lo, and also if it's close to it, as we said. Im en benehem yoter mi alpaim, right? So if there's not more than 2,000, right? So what's 2,000? 2,000 is a mil, right? Same thing. Why they call 2,000? Because the yeah. Any guess? Okay.
2,000 is 2,000.
What's 2,000?
2,000, no? 2,000 in
Right. So what 2,000 what? That's the question, right? What 2,000 of what? So right, the answer is that we're talking about 2,000 amot, right? 2,000 amot is 1 mil. So it comes out exactly like a kilometer, right? Almost, right? Why? Because 2,000 amot is 1,000, right, meters. So it's a kilometer, right? You see from there. Okay, so yeah. There you go. So how does it krach? It's considered to be like a walled city. We should read in the 15th. The im en benem, right? So if that's the case, right? When it says that they don't have a distance, lo ela asamuch bilvad. It's talking about only when it's close by. That's issue, right? If it's close by or not, to measure that, try to right. V'zeh davar mukhrach b'Gemara. So it says that's how it comes out in the Talmud. Aha. Okay.
Kavod Harav, how did they used to measure these things back in the Talmud?
Oh, good question. Yeah. So the truth is, right, that the Talmud says, if I remember correctly, it's in this system. It's in Masechet Eruvin. Yes. So over there, right, tells you in Eruvin that they used to measure with a rope. They had ropes, measuring ropes. That's what they did.
Do you know where in Erovim could be this?
Which page?
Yes, by any chance?
We'll tell you. We'll tell you next time. We'll keep you in suspense for a while.
Okay, good. Thank you.
If I tell you now, you won't be in suspense. So I'm going to keep you in suspense.
No, because then I'll look for it. No, so
we'll keep you on your toes. Okay, so right as it says, right, that they used to measure with ropes, as we said, right? That's a different issue, right? How they measured. It's a whole discussion about that, by the way, in the Talmud, the methodology that they used for that. It's quite intricate, the whole thing. It's not so simple the way they did it, right? So they had all kinds of rules and regulations and God knows what else, right? All kinds of things. Okay, so it's not. It's by the way, it's not even like one page. We're talking about like several pages over there. It talks about this. It's all discussion there. So anyway, right? Let's go on. But dochak gam ken. So he says it's also forced to say. So until now, right? We're reading the words of the Rambam. So comes a bit Yosef and says, you know what? This is forced. The shabesh nuschat Rabbeinu, right? To try to change the text of Rabbeinu, the Torah. But he says, you know what? You can push a little bit and say like this, force it a little bit and say the ובלבד שלא יהיו רחוקים יותר ממיל, דקאמר, that which he said, right, that it shouldn't be further than a mile, a mil, right, a kilometer. Dekama lo ka'e ela aresha. It's talking about the first part, right, the first section. Dehainu hasmuchin lahem, which is talking about, that they're close by. Apilu enam nir'im imahem, even if they're not seen together with them. Aval hasefa dehainu nir'im imahem. When it comes to the end, where it's talking about that that they're visible with them. Look, it's not referring to that. The habehediya kamra, because we said, right, was regarding that. Boom, apilu enam smuchim, that even if they're not close by, the od yesh lomar says also there is to say she'Rambam v'Rabbeinu, that the Rambam and the Tur mefarshim dechi ba'eh, that when we require, right, the ad kamal, that when the Gemara asks, right, how much, lama samuch ba, it's not talking about being in the proximity. The samuch mishtamia samuch mamash, because when we say proximity, we're talking about like really close by. We're not talking about a kilometer, like really juxtaposed. Samuch mamash. Dehainu betoch ibura shel ir. So what does that mean? We're talking about just right the outskirts of the city, right, which are. There's also laws about this, by the way, about, when you build a city, right, what's considered to be the outskirts of the city. There's a whole discussion about that as well, right, in Eruvin. So lots of stuff to learn, over there. Right, so, yeah. So, by the way, Eruvin is considered to be one of the hardest tractates of the Talmud to learn. Tough one, it's a tough one. So anyway, right, because it's like very mathematical, a lot of geometry there, all kinds of stuff. Okay, so yeah, so as we said, right, if you're good at math, geometry, you'll probably have a fun time with it. Let's put it this way. Okay.
I like geometry and algebra and all that.
Yeah, I also like geometry, by the way. When I took it, I really enjoyed it for some reason. I don't know why. Don't ask. I don't know why, but anyway, right? It did help me to learn that Gemara, that I did geometry beforehand. It was very helpful. Anyway, right, getting back to our discussion. So he says, therefore, Ella Anireh, by it's talking about when it's seen together. Then Svara Lomar Shafilu Rachok Kama Prasad. Because you can't say, right, that applies even, if you're going like even several parsaot, right, which is, one parsa is like 4 kilometers, right? So we're talking about, if it goes that much, several of them. So we could be talking about like, 10 miles, God knows. What, still you're going to tell me that, it's considered to be like one place? Even if it's 10 miles or 20 kilometers, right? Whatever. Minakach, because it's seen together with it. Yeni don't come on, right? It's a little bit forced to say such a big number like that, he says. Okay, so now we analyzed, right, the Rambam and the Tur. So now he goes to the Ran, right? The next phase, right? Phase 3, right? Aval Haran Katav. Right, the Ran says, "Ktav yesh mefarshim denireh samuch dekama hainu." So some say, right, that some explain that when we say that it's close by, hainu the mitchashev mitchumei ayir. It's considered to be like a part of the, right, the borders of the city. Ve'achi dayak lishna. So he said, that's the way the language, right, implies. The kamar near that it's seen together with it. Right, even all the more so, not all the more so, even though. So he doesn't say, right, that they see it from the city, it's visible from the city. So he says the truth is that they're both correct. What does that mean? That they see it from the city. They do. Bainan, we require that too. Or alternatively, right, I can tell you, if the ad kama, Or when it says, right, this word, when it says in the Talmud, right, how much distance do we allow? Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah mechamatan litveria, right, from this place to that place, which is a mil, right, as we said, akula milta mehader. It's going on back on the whole thing. Ben lenireh imo ben samuch. Whether it's seen together with it or it's considered to be close by, it applies to both cases, right? The distance of the mil. So he says, nevertheless, it doesn't seem right to say like that, he says, that it applies to both of them. Because if it was, like, even like several, as we said, right, 10 miles away, whatever, right? 5 miles, 10 miles. What? Just because we see it together, right, from a distance, so it's going to be considered like a part of the city, right? In other words, it seems like far-fetched to stretch it out that much. Literally stretch it out, right? Okay. So good. Do a stretch like that, right? With those ropes, right? Right, Bruria, those ropes. You got to stretch out those ropes.
What kind of ropes are these,
Well, your standard, right, ropes that they had in those days. Right?
But they don't stretch, or no?
I'm sorry. No, what I mean to say is that, you got to stretch it out until like it's totally,
Oh, okay, I got it.
until it's wit's end, right? In other words, you can't have it sagging. You know what I mean?
No, no, they have to be.
That's what I meant to say. You got to stretch it out. Okay, so it says, right? So it says also now we can say that according to what we said, that we give, right, this distance of a mil. It even applies when it's seen together with it. Kasher the imkin, as that would be difficult. Why? Because if so, lama is kir. So then why did he mention the fact that it's seen together with it? If there isn't more than a meal between them, even though it's not seen together with it, anyway, it will be judged like a walled city. Like I wrote. But so therefore we have to force this a little bit and say, right, when we said, right, when we asked this question, how much distance do we give? Ben asamuch ben anireh, right? It's talking about both cases, whether it's talking about it's seen together or they're juxtaposed. V'chi amar Rabbi Yirmiyah, when Rabbi Yirmiyah said, right, from this city to the other city, meal, that it's one meal, the distance, it's going on both of them. So it says, however, hakadita, but it's going with a different context for each one. Anyways, the different, right, for each one. The be'eno mashkinan amil, right, b'midat talicha. When it's not seen together, so then, right, what we do is we measure it as a meal. So what does that mean? How long does it take for you to walk from one to the other? Bekarka, on the ground, but when it comes to being seen together with it, we're talking about that it's sitting on top of the mountain. Lo mashkinan hamil bekarka. So then, right, we don't measure the meal on the ground. Right? Oh, there you go. Right now, the rope has come into the picture. Right. I hope you're happy now. Right. So it says, right. There you go. You got it, right? So we got the rope. Okay, so
forcibly, right? But we got the rope, no?
Okay, so it says like this, right? That so in other words, what he's telling you is like this, something interesting, right? Which is also brought down the Gemara, as we said, right? That what? That when you're measuring from a slope, right? In other words, down the mountain, okay? So the question is, how do you measure the distance, right? Do you do it like just straight down, like, you're going like on a slope, right? 45-degree slope. Is that how you do it? Or do you just go on the base of the mountain, right? And walk from there, to the end of the mountain. So that'll come out to be longer, right? That's a little bit geometry there, right? It's like, the sides of the triangle, right? That if the slope, right, if the slope will be a little bit longer, but if you measure it on the bottom, on the base, it'll be a little bit shorter because the slope, always is going to be bigger.
Kabbalah Harav, like the Pythagoras, like the hypotenuse, right? No?
I'm sorry,
What
what's
is it? The like Pythagoras, the
yeah,
hypotenuse.
all those theories that we learn in geometry, like it's pretty much what we're talking about here, but in a more, down to earth way, right? I'm not talking about theorems and this and that, right? Just, logic, whatever, right? Basic logic, whatever.
So
But it's the same idea. It's the same idea. Yes, yes.
Okay.
Right, all those formulas that we learned.
Mhm.
Okay, so right, as we said, that's the way it goes. So he says, right, that when you're coming down a mountain, what you do is, right, now, right, as we said, "Shenotrina chevel me'ir le'ir ba'avir." So he says, what we do is, we don't put the rope on the ground. That's not how we measure it, right? So in other words, we don't want to measure it as a slope. We want to measure it as a straight line going in the air, right? So that's going to be a shorter distance, right? As you can imagine, right? If you know a little bit geometry. Okay. There you go, right? So yeah, you gotta learn that Gemara. You gotta get into that stuff, right? You're gonna enjoy that stuff. So anyway,
Which
right?
one is where's the exact page? You remember? No.
Eruvin. I think it's also in Makot, right? Bezrat Hashem. The pages we'll get to next time, Bezrat Hashem. Maybe he'll bring the pages over here. I don't know. Whatever, right? We'll see. So anyway, it says that what do you call it? שנותן החבל מאיר לעיר באוויר, ואם אין ממשך אותו חבל יותר ממיל, so now he tells you, right, that if that rope that you measured it with, right, doesn't come out to be more than a mil, nidon kekrach, it's going to be right together with the walled city. It can be considered like one city. So the truth is, right, that here the actual distance is really more than a mil, right? Because we're measuring in the air. But on the ground, right, on the ground it's going to be more. Because you're going on a slope. So yeah, that's the way it goes. Good. So it goes on here, right? So he says, how do you explain this Ran? Kachen, right? This is the way you explain it. Some explain, right, that when we say that it's seen close together with it or close by, the Kamar that it said, it's considered to be a part of the town. That this village is considered to be a part of that, right, that city, that walled city. But if it's not considered to be from the right the what do you call it, the borders of that city, even though it's seen from the city, you can see it. Also doesn't have, right, the distance of a mil. It's not considered to be part of the city. When it's considered to be, right, from the borders of that city, right, if it's close by, which means that it's within a mil, or seen together with it, even though it's more than a mil, but since it's considered to be right from the borders of the city, it's considered to be a part of the city. And alternatively, right, we can say a different way. When it says, right, that how much do we give you, it's going on the whole thing. Meaning what, on both of them, right? Whether it's seen or close by. Right, that's exactly what I just told you. But if you're going to tell me, right, that it's already like a few miles, whatever, it's a big distance, it's not considered to be anymore, right, really a part of the city at all. That if it's visible from the town, from the city, I'm sorry, it's going to be like judged like together with it. Says it doesn't seem reasonable to say something like that. That it's so far away, right? 5 miles, 10 miles, and still it's a part of the city, right? It's already far-fetched. וזהו שכתב בכל מקום אינו נראה. So this is what he wrote, right? That it's not, if it's not seen together, שאם היה רחוק כמה מפרסאות, that it would be several, right, miles, as we said, מפני שרואים אותו מן הכרך, יהיה נידון ככרך, right? That's will be already far-fetched. Okay, it will be that it should be judged like the city. Okay, let's see how much we got to go here. Just a couple of lines. Okay, so we'll finish this off, and then we'll see where we go from there. Right, so Umash Katav Rabbeinu, that which Rabbeinu wrote, like the tour, right? Even if the town is not right now, right, walled, it's not really walled. Ata, right, at this time. In other words, in the past it was. Right now it's not. But if it was walled in the time of Yeshua, so then we're in the 15th, right? That's what the tour said. So the question is, right, what's the source for that? So it says Bet Yosef, Pashut bePerek Kama de Megillah. It's in the first perek of Megillah, right? It's Bet Amud Bet. Ukvar nitba'er ta'amo shel dabar, right? So we already explained what the reason for that is. In other words, we talked about that yesterday, right? That we want to remind you of Eretz Israel, right? Remember Israel, right? Don't go back to your old countries, right? Don't think about the past. Think about the future. We're going back there. So yeah, so it says, right, that so the point is, right, we want to give kavod, right, honor to Eretz Israel, to remind you, right, that that's the place to be. Don't think, oh yeah, I'll go back, to my old country. What old country? Where are you going to, right? You want to live in the past, right? There's a joke, they say nostalgia is not what it used to be. You know what I mean? What are you, nostalgic? What you're thinking about the past all the time? Think about the future. You know what I mean? Look ahead. Don't look behind you. That's why the rabbis want to remind you. Eretz Israel. That's the place to be. Right? So don't waste your time with the other countries. They hate us. And they don't like us being there. You know what I mean? We're not welcome. We're not loved, we're not, even though they try to tell you, yeah, we love Israel, and they don't love us, believe me, they don't love us, they hate us. That's the truth. The only difference, between the Arabs, and the Christians is that the Arabs are honest, they tell you in your face that they hate you. But the Christians, they tell you, we love you, we love Israel. But the truth is they don't love us, they don't. Right? That's the truth. You understand? That's there's a parish of the Malbim, or something like that, or the Maharalmi Prague, right? Because in Hebrew, there's two words, right, for the enemy, right? One is called oyev and one is called soneh, right? So one of the commentaries explains, right, that these two words in Hebrew, they're not the same, they're not like total synonyms, you know what I mean? What's the difference, right? Oyev means somebody who hates you, but he tells you in your face, like, I hate your guts, like, that's what the Arabs do, what I mean? They tell us that we want to kill you, we want to push you into the sea, But the soneh is the one, tells you, yeah, we love you, but the truth is, in his heart, he harbors hatred. He doesn't want to reveal it, you understand? So this is the Christians, that's what they do. They tell us they love us, but the truth is they hate our guts. You know what I mean? So that's the way it is. What can you do, right? The facts are the facts. Okay, so yeah. So where are we going now? Let's see what we got left here. Yeah, so we're going to do Shulchan Aruch and we'll stop there. Shulchan Aruch Bet. So it says Shulchan Aruch here. So it says also the villages, right, which are seen together with right the walled city, even though it's outside the wall, right? That's the whole point, right? Obviously. Even though they're not really so close by, right? As we said. For instance, right, what's the example? that they're on the mountain, right? These two places. So meaning what? That the city, right, is on the mountain, and therefore, if you look out from the city, right, if you look out, you're going to see that village because you're looking down, So, just it's a matter of, visibility. But it's not so close, right? So, or, right, that's one possibility. Or שסמוכים להן, אפילו אינם נראים בהן. Or the other possibility is that, they're close by, but we don't really see it together, right? When is that? כגון שהם בעמק, right? When they're in the valley, right? So what happens is that since the city is in the valley, you can't really see the village, which is, on the flat ground because, right, it's just too low. You don't have a good view, right? Your vantage point is not good there. That's the idea, right? So either way, right, one or the other, right? But it says, but the condition over here is like this, right? That when we say that they're close by, that means they can't be closer, like further than a mil, right? Kilometer. So if it's more than a kilometer, we don't call that close by. You know what I mean? That's already quite a distance. So it says also here, when it comes to Shushan, right, which we said, right, it was the capital of the Persian Empire at that time, right, during the Purim story. So now they called Hamadan in Iran, right? That's where it is. So that place, Hamadan, right? By the way, I don't think there's any Jews left there, in that town, in that city, whatever. So, it's not really relevant today, but if you happen to be there for some reason, right, for Purim, right? But I hope you're not going to go there, right? I don't recommend it. But anyway, right? So what I'm trying to say is, right, that if you do live in that town, Hamadan, you read on the 15th, right? So what's the big chidush, right? What's the novel idea? Even though it was not walled in the time of Yeshua, but since the miracle was done there, right? So they gave it the same status, right, as Yeshua. So that's the thing, right? So that's the only city which has that status, right? Hamadan. But the rest of the towns in the world, right? Either it's one or the other, right? Either it's walled or not walled, right? You can't have it both ways. Okay, good. Any questions? Okay, so I guess we'll stop there. Be blessed with well-held happiness. We'll see you tomorrow. Chazak Baruch Laila Tov. And pray for our valiant soldiers who are doing an amazing job, the best army in the world, right? Because God is on their side. Simple as that. Right? By the way, let me tell you something interesting, It's something to think about. Which is that, it says in the Zohar Kadosh and, in other places probably as well, if I remember correctly, that, when it comes to the final redemption, of the Jews, when Mashiach comes, you know what I mean? It says in the Zohar Kadosh, it won't occur because the Jews, deserve to be redeemed, because they're not going to deserve it. They're not going to be deserving of it. That's not the reason why we're being redeemed. So then what is it? That the time has come, you know what I mean? In other words, it's already the end of, the alarm clock is going off, you know what I mean? God is like saying, okay, time is up, like I got to do this already. Because, the world can only go 6,000 years, you know what I mean? So how much can I wait? So, in other words, that we're being redeemed today, and being victorious and all these victories that we have, all these wars that we won, and we have a state and we have a country and this and that. This is not because we deserve it. We don't deserve it. But the time has come, you know what I mean? That's what it is. So, the Goyim, they don't understand this, the non-Jews. They think, those Jews, they're sinners and this and that, and look what happens in Tel Aviv, and don't talk about that because it's not relevant. You understand? The time has come. It doesn't matter anymore. So that's what it's all about. Okay, I'll leave you with that thought. Laila Tov, all the best.
Kavod Harav, thank you so much.
All the best.
Thanks, Rabbi.
Laila Tov.